What is up, everybody? I hope you are enjoying this episode of my man Adam Shell, and I wanted to take a second while I have your ear to let you know that next Thursday, October 17th from 7 to 9:30 p.m. EST, Breathe with Cannabis is back, and this month's theme is amazing. This month's theme is the Relationship Healing Edition. So whether or not you're having challenges in how you relate to yourself, your romantic partner, friendships, cannabis, anything in life, this workshop is going to be an amazing opportunity to come allow yourself to usher in your next level of evolution when it comes to your relationships alongside our worldwide community of spiritual seekers just like you. So to find out more about the event and register, head down to the show notes for this episode, and I will see you all there. Now back to the show. Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. If there's one thing I've learned in the realm of psychedelic medicines, it's that it really helps to have a solid foundation of spiritual practices before connecting with these medicines. The truth is that much of what we face in these experiences is going to be challenging, and by allowing yourself to tap into modalities such as breathwork and fasting, for instance, beforehand, you prime yourself with the necessary experience to handle these challenges and come out seeing them happening for you rather than to you. Today's guest on the show is a man who, along with having an incredible spiritual foundation from which he teaches and trains from, is no stranger to challenging experiences within the realm of psychedelic medicines. And in this episode, we dive right into some of these experiences, what he's learned as a result of them, how breathwork and fasting have supported him in these experiences, and much, much more. So please, help me in giving a big hand to my man Taylor Budd as I welcome him onto the show. Taylor Budd, my brother, dude, I am super excited to be here with you today. You know, as I said in the intro, finding people that like so many of the same things I do that are near and dear to my heart is not commonplace in my life. And so when I find someone who's into so many different things I'm into, breathwork, fasting, psychedelics, comedy as well. You know, I think that one of the challenges within the self-development or healing space, we'll call it, is people taking themselves too seriously. So I love, comedy. It really allows us to come lighthearted. But, before we dive into all these different topics, man, how did you first get interested in the realm of, say, psychedelic living? Because everything you're doing, like, even though fasting isn't considered a psychedelic medicine, it's fucking psychedelic in nature, right? So, like, how did someone like Taylor, who's from New Jersey, right up my neck of the woods, right in the Northeast, end up being interested in everything you're interested in now, psychedelic states, psychedelic reality, et cetera, man? How'd that start for you?
It's funny, man, because I guess at some level, my ego kind of helped me out in some ways. My false self kind of helped me out because it was like, I just wanted to be better at football. And I just thought that, like, being vegan, and then, like, once I got into veganism, I was like, oh, man, fasting makes sense, I was like, man, this is going to make me have me having so much more clarity to play quarterback. And my identity was so wrapped around being a quarterback. So, like, that ego, it kind of led me into, like, a brick wall that kind of was great, though. I couldn't carry it through, but it definitely, I think it gave me some structure, as far as, like, just playing football and stuff was like, you got a regimented lifestyle, to where you have a discipline, create like a vehicle of work ethic to like move forward in some direction. So like once I got into fasting and veganism in different, states of being, I guess you could say, it gave me like a good reference point as far as like measuring progress. And so, I mean, honestly, I guess I got into it for the wrong reasons, but then it ended up, but it was the right reasons. I don't know.
Yeah, dude, it's funny how, sometimes we can look back in hindsight, at least for me as well, and realize like, the ego isn't all bad. There are some things it picks up now, albeit the reason behind it might be toxic, damaging, whatever, but it gives us that kickstart. And if it weren't for that kickstart, we may have never found psychedelics or the other things that can help us perform better. Because for me, it was very similar. Like when I was around 20, I had my first mortality crisis where I started peeing blood one day, didn't know what happened. And it really woke me up to like, hey, my choices in life with regards to my health really matter. So I started getting into, exercise, bodybuilding for all the wrong reasons, right? Jersey Shore was out during that time. So like, I was like, well, they get a lot of women. I want big muscles too. But I'm fortunate that I got into it at all, right? Because even though it might not have been the best reason or the healthiest reason, I grew into a healthier reason, over time. I realized bodybuilding wasn't actually like, for me personally, where I enjoyed working out the most, but it did allow me to shape my physique, realize that my decisions have power. I wasn't a victim in life. I had the opportunity to change my life if I didn't like it. And so it's really cool how those things, when you look back in hindsight, you're like, damn, thank goodness my ego did attach onto that, because it kind of gave me the foundation from which I could then build upon. It's really cool.
Yeah. I guess, like that's where your field of awareness was, or my field of awareness was at those times. Like, it's like life it knows what you know. So I guess it's just like giving you a relative challenge, and you're like, okay, this is what you consider to be healthy, whether it's like eating fish or eating chicken or whatever, and then you like cycle into vegetarianism or something, and then now your whole, because I think the more that you go through that process of elimination and getting rid of things that you thought you needed, the more you're like, all right, what else can I move on without? And then, I guess you just make more, relative decisions at that point, because then, you get into fasting and you're like, damn, it's kind of scary almost what I don't need.
Yeah, dude, 100%. It's very interesting you say that, because for me, what's happened as I've gotten more stuff out of my life is, this is no surprise, more space has revealed itself. And with that space, not only does it allow more space for my higher self and Holy Spirit, right-minded thinking, to come into my frame of reference, but it also allows me to just not have as much pressure. I think that, and we've heard this a million times, but, we grew up in a world, especially in the Western world, where we're told that, hey, you just need a new car and then you'll be happy. You just need a bigger house and you'll be happy. You just need the new smart refrigerator and then you'll be happy, right? Yeah. And yeah, that shit will rent the hell out of your happiness. Let's be real, right? It'll rent the absolute hell out of it. But it does not actually lead to true joy. Happiness is just a state. It's an ever-changing state. Whereas joy, I really believe, is our innate state of being. And the way we get back to joy is we stop having so many components in our life, or at least that's one aspect of it. Again, the why, the purpose, that definitely is part of it too. But, kind of downsizing is a big part of it. I always say that, like, if you have a metaphorical backpack on and you're looking to like, oh, let me put more stuff in there, most of us never think to ask, or I'll make it personal. I, for a long time, didn't think to ask, well, what's already in the backpack? Do I still need all of this? And then metaphorically, right, when you open up, you're like, cinder blocks, who put these in there, right? And that's kind of the illustrate all the things that we keep on us, the limiting beliefs, the unconscious stories, et cetera, that end up just weighing us down and stopping us from reaching our full potential. But yeah, we got to subtract before we add, for sure, man.
Yeah, and I think that like it's just not realistic, and I guess words are really important, I think, when we're going through this process. But like I feel like, yeah, when people call happiness, a lot of it is just like they just want to be like elated all the time, and I just don't think that, like, contentment is a different thing than just being elated all the time. It's almost like drinking coffee all the time. You just got a bunch of false energy. If your happiness is ruled by external things, then it's just no different than coffee. Like, like, okay, I got this thing, I got the next thing, I got the next girl, I got the whatever next thing is. Everything is just objectified. Like, happiness is just an object. So then it can be lost by, the external world.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like Carl Jung states too, and, I'm sure you've heard in one way or another, I think the same idea is kind of portrayed by many different people, but, no tree's branches can reach to heaven if its roots don't first reach to hell. And so, like, how can you even appreciate happiness if you don't understand sadness, because they're polar opposites, but they are on the same spectrum. And I think that's one of the most beautiful aspects of life. And one of the reasons I love hermetics as much as I do is because you realize that there really is a state that you can get to when you become like unfuckwithable, right? Where your state of being is not dependent on whatever sensations or emotions or thoughts are rising through you. You're able to have that juxtaposition where you can see like, oh, I'm not the emotions, I'm not the thoughts, etc. I experience them. I enjoy when there's ones that are really euphoric or, really amazing. But also, in a lot of ways, deep sadness is beautiful too, because why do we get sad? Well, it means it's something that really mattered to us, something we had meaning of, was lost or changed, etc. And I think that, if we can find the beauty in all of those things, we start to realize, just like Joseph Campbell stated, that bliss is any emotion felt all the way through, and so I love that example, man, because it is so true. Like, for many years, I'll make it personal again, I rode that dopamine roller coaster, of just like the next hit. And it was just constant, absolutely constant. And what I've realized is that by slowing down, you can actually speed up quite a bit. And it sounds counterintuitive, but I've learned that lesson innumerable times in my life. And I still play the, hot stove game every once in a while. Let me try drinking a shot of espresso. And then one becomes two. And then the next day I'm like, oh, I should do that again. And then I'm like, no, got to get off this roller coaster again, But it's important to know yourself like that and understand the dynamics behind it and, be able to make wiser decisions and use discernment moving forward for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's no, like, you have to know, you have to experience, I guess, fear, to even know what bravery is. And like, it's really like, because so much of it is just doubt, it's a lot of doubt in the system, it's a lack of will in the system it hasn't been realized to its fullest potential, like the will isn't like fully inhabited in the body. So then, all of those voids, I guess you could say, are just going to manifest as different forms of doubt, whether it be it fear or anxiety. It's all like fear, anger, all that's just fear. So it's like, that's always going to be available. You can always identify with doubt. And I guess, yeah, like once you, get in touch with the real likeness of your will, of your true self or what have you, yeah, you have a different value system. So it's just like, do I really want this fleeting experience, or do I want to sustain contentment and to really have control over just my will ultimately? Because I mean, if you're just content, like I've done like what you're saying, I've done that as well, where I'm just, whether it's like one girl to the next girl or one hit to the next hit or whatever it is, it's like I'm doubting so much in my life. Like, it's like the fear of missing out, I guess, where you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna get another one. I don't know if another, it's like, I know I'm not living right, so I don't know if I'm gonna get another opportunity. It's like, same way people fear death. They're like, I'm not living right, so I fear this. I don't know if I'm gonna get another opportunity. I don't know if I'm gonna see a girl like this again. So you're not taking care of yourself. So then, like, your whole perspective changes. Like, you're like, man, I know I'm destroying myself. So will I ever be at this state again? Or, and then it's just the fear of growth as well. Like, it's fear is fear is a mother, man. Fear is crazy, man.
What is up, family? I wanted to take a second while you're tuning in to tell you about an amazing new product I recently began using. Now, you guys know I do ads very rarely, and my promise to you is that anything I speak about is something I personally have found value in using regularly. Well, recently, I came across a company called Brain Supreme, who sells microdoses of mushrooms mixed with adaptogens, nootropics, and other additions as well. And even though I've microdosed off and on for years, I have never felt results like these. In only 2 weeks, I'm sleeping better, I have far less mind chatter, my ability to perform has exponentially improved, and best of all, the sense of inner peace I've been feeling is like nothing I've ever experienced in microdosing before. Right now, you can get 15% off of any of their products when you use code SPRAGUE15 at checkout. And to find out more about them and grab some for yourself, head down to the show notes for this episode and begin your journey into microdosing today. Now back to the show. It is, bro. It's so interesting, too, to talk about this because, fear is something that at least I would beg to argue everyone that's ever lived has experienced some sort of fear before. And, maybe it shows up in different ways or whatever, but this is exactly what it is. For me personally, and I'd love to ask you after too how this showed up for you, but for me, it was, and again, like fear is something that still pops up, but the ability to look beyond it and realize like, okay, just like an ice bath, right? Like when I get in an ice bath, if I can just understand it's going to be fucking cold, it's going to be uncomfortable, and that's part of it, then it's not as shocking to me, right? Like, because I think for me, a lot of the time, we'll use the ice bath as a real world example, like when you're with your boys and, you're all like, jokingly flexing, like, I can get in this ice bath, it'll be fine, right? There's this kind of thought behind that of like, it's going to be easy, right? And that makes it more challenging when it gets in and it's actually hard. And so what I've found is that like realizing like, hey, it's okay. I can have a relationship with fear. I can feel it, right? And I can also not believe it, and I can also not let it dictate my reality. But to the degree that I go through life thinking like, I'm never going to feel fear again, then when I feel it, it's so much more damaging because now I'm building an identity around this person that never feels fear, which is just completely silly anyway. But, you know, being able to have a relationship with that fear, I think is extremely important because it's kind of like the same idea as, you know, would Luke Skywalker have ever become Luke Skywalker without Darth Vader? You know, he didn't ignore Darth Vader. He didn't, you know, think that Darth Vader had no power. He just knew that he was coming from love. And so he would ultimately win, but it was going to be a test, you know, quite a big test. And it's the same with fear. Like, I'm grateful for fear because it allows me over and over to choose love in the moment and show myself over and over that I can face hard things and still continue to move forward. But at the same time, you know, fear stopped me in my tracks for many years, as it does for many people. And I'm curious for you, man, like, what did it look like in your life when you were maybe in a fear state and you started to be able to move past that? Were psychedelics a part of it? Did that come later on? Like, what did that process of being able to move past fear and have this relationship with fear that you have now, where you're able to exist with it, but not let it, you know, overtake you? What did that journey look like for you?
Yeah, man. Like you said it well earlier, talking about, you know, once you realize that you're not the thoughts and you're not the emotions. I think that, like, just having the discernment for what is sensuality, like you were saying about like experiencing fear or whatever, like it's there to let you know like that it's time to be brave. It's just like temptation is there, you know, to let you know like it's time to be, you know, content and be steadfast and everything. So like to try to fight it makes it so much worse. It's like if you walk through a flea market or something, or somewhere where they're cooking onions or something, and you're like, no, I don't smell those onions. It's like it's coming through, it's flowing through you. It's just sensuality. Like if your body is sensing some sort of energy or some sort of, you know, passing chemical experience. So like I think that the more that I got in touch with the breath definitely helped. I mean, and then, you know, I guess you always have those different points of reference to kind of to use, you know, things that happen in your life, whether you witness people exhibit bravery or different times in your life where you didn't even think twice and you just acted in a way that was just, and then you saw the results of that. So I had, like, I guess a bunch of stored up virtue or backlogged experiences like early in my life, you know, like in my youth, to where like it came time to make adult decisions, and like it had some reference to translate some of those behaviors, you know. Not to say that like I've completely figured it out. I just think that the more that I got in touch with the breath, the more that I started to study, I guess you could call it metaphysics or whatever, you know, sacred geometry, the body. It's such a loaded way, you know. It's hard because it's holistic, but like just studying, I guess, the likeness of will or the likeness of the originator, the creator, whatever, and how we reflect that as individuals. Like the more I got in touch with that, like, okay, this is, you know, I was made in the likeness of something that is never disturbed. So the more that I can get in touch with that and like kind of stay in alignment or having some point of reference to that, whether it's like some people use affirmations, some people use prayer, some people use, you know, talismans, whatever, just for them to recenter so that they can pierce that void, that fear, and kind of see beyond the duality of success and failure. I think that's like so much of it, you know, like we get caught up. It's like it's a perfect verse in the Tao Te Ching where it's saying like, which is more dangerous, you know, success or failure? And I think that we just get caught up in, you know, I guess our subjective perceptions of what success and failure is, instead of just taking one step at a time and just taking care of ourselves and just staying patient, and but at the same time, you know, taking advantage of all the opportunities that we've been given. Because it's like if you're not, the fear is like really abundant the more that you squander. I think the less that you squander opportunities to grow and take care of yourself, then I feel like when fear arises, you're like, all right, that's just part of the game. You know, that's just going to be there. But I'm not identifying with that because I know I did what it takes. Like if you did the work to get something, if somebody you know arises or some challenge arises to try to take that away from you, you're like, no, this is rightfully mine based on what I put in, and there's no need for me to fear. I just have right now. It's like part of like what you're saying, the challenge to see it through and complete the task.
Yeah, dude, 100%. You know, the idea that just popped through to me is it's kind of like people that build a successful business and over time, and they start to learn a lot about business and they end up making a lot of money versus like a lottery winner, right? You'll notice the energetics in those two people are very different because the lottery winner is going to have a lot more fear because they just had a lot of money come into them. But if they lose it, they don't really believe they're ever going to be able to get that amount of money back. Whereas like a high level business owner, I've heard Gary Vee talk about this, Tom Bilyeu, et cetera. You know, they'll say like, if everything got taken away from me tomorrow, like, yeah, I'd probably be frustrated and annoyed, but I know I could build it back again because I understand the system that will get me back to there. So when you were talking about success and fear and like which one is more dangerous, you know, like for me, both of them are equally dangerous because we're talking about polarity, right? And at the end of the day, the true path I feel is the middle way, right? That's what Buddha and all these non-dualists, you know, speak of. Is like, hey, what about the middle way here, right? Not too much, not too little, right? Perfectly in that sweet spot, you know, in that perfect zone. And I think that, you know, in our world today, we see a lot of polarity, right? Right or left. No one in the middle being like, well, maybe they both. I mean, they don't have much good ideas on either side, but let's just pretend they did, right? But like, you know, everything is black or white, you know, and we understand through Hermetics and, you know, the Tao and all these different, you know, spiritual systems or just, you know, schools of thought or whatnot, that we're never going to really find balance by swinging from end to end, right? Yet at the same time, if we haven't maybe experienced enough yet, we're a newer soul or however you want to put it in language that anyone could understand, we may think it's really fun to do that. Like I always kind of come up with the analogy of if you're a kid and you see a snow globe, what's really fun about it? Cause and effect. Let's shake this thing up and see what happens. Maybe we break it, you know? There's like a phase of life where we want to just shake shit up. But as we get older, we start to appreciate more the image that's only seen in the snow globe if we allow the snow in there to settle. And I think that like neither one is good or bad. It's just, you know, difference. And I think at the end of the day, variety being the spice of life, I think that's really what we're here to experience. And, you know, I forget who said this, but to be messy, to color outside the lines. And that's, you know, for me, why I've enjoyed psychedelics so much, because just when you think like, dude, I can do mushrooms, they will fucking check you, you know, LSD will check you. These things demand almost a middle way type thing. Like, yes, the last time I did it may have been very enjoyable, but I'm not going to, you know, assume that the next time is going to be the same thing. You know, having that ability to go, well, maybe like the Taoist farmer, right? Maybe, you know, that story is one of my favorites, you know, and you know, it's just like it really illustrates this idea of like, we don't know what we don't know until we know it. And even then we don't really know it. Right. So like, let's just be humble and be able to really follow our hearts and see where that heart leads us. And along the way, as long as we're doing something that feels in alignment with our heart, like you're doing with breath work and even semi-pro football and all the things you really love, you know, as long as you follow that path, you're going to have opportunities to dive more into fear and dive more into love and be able to get closer and closer to that middle way of just finding peace within the middle, you know, is what I found anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and like you're saying, man, I mean, it's just staying present enough to continue to, you know, to have that curiosity to just see that, you know, hey, maybe I could get better. Maybe I could do this. Maybe I could run a marathon. Maybe I could build a house. Maybe, you know, and I think, you know, that just comes with just not letting atrophy set in because, yeah, like, you know, a guy wins the lottery, he doesn't have those, it's so much atrophy in his life as far as like the business world. Like there's no means of managing the money. There's no vehicles to manage the money. And it's like, same thing like with a acid or mushroom experience. Like you could be at the top of your game or relatively so, and when you took it the last time, but say you slacked off or maybe you just haven't been paying attention as much. And, you know, just because you won the championship a year ago doesn't mean you're going to automatically get it this year. So it's like, it just, yeah, it'll check you because you maybe don't have the avenues or you haven't been doing the work to where you can handle that type of chemical experience and the energy that is going to bring, you know, by opening the channels like that in your body, you might not be able to, you know, contain it or, I mean, not contain it or even experience it because, you know, you just haven't been on it, man. I think we get ahead of ourselves, I think, you know what I mean? It's just, you think that it's kind of like that one expression where it's like, you know, you do it once right. You know, people think the novice does it once right and they think that they're professional and the professional, you know, does it till he can't do it wrong. And I think that's kind of like the type of care that we need to have with everything, Because I mean, especially with comedy, I see that with comedy. Like, you sometimes you do a club and it's packed in there and there's a lot of energy for you to go and kill them. And you go into a club and it's not that many people in there, but you have to keep the same professionalism for that situation, or you could really damage your own experience of yourself. Like
Yeah, dude.
'cause there's been times, yeah, where like I do a lot of shrooms and I'll get through that, and then I'll just assume that I can take that amount later, and it's like it's a lot tougher.
Yeah, dude. That's like, most music festival stories in a nutshell for me is like, oh, I did this back at home, no problem. And then I do it around like 60,000 randoms, and it gets a lot more challenging. It's like the drug Olympics in ways, right?
Yeah,
Which is always funny to me how like, a lot of people when I was growing up and getting into psychedelics about 10 years ago, they'd always say like, hey, just try it your first time at a music festival. And I'm like, that's like saying like, hey, your first time skiing, just go to a double black diamond, dude. No worries. Like it's almost like starting at like the crux of the most challenging experience you can possibly have, other than like, taking a fat dose at a funeral or something. Like I'm sure there are some more challenging experiences, jail or like doing it in there, I imagine would be worse. But, a lot of times like people will kind of start doing psychedelics from this like insanely challenging place. And I'm curious for you, man, because whenever I talk to other people that are who I would describe as highly optimized, which is my business name, that's what I call like really absolute gangsters. But whenever I talk to someone who's obviously got their physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being in check, and they're working on it actively, and they're really passionate around it, and they also connect with psychedelics, which for me is no shock whatsoever. But to the view of the mainstream, it's like, wait, those things don't go together. You practice health and you do psychedelics and connect with cannabis or anything like that. I love decoupling and breaking this stigma. And so whenever I have someone like you on, I love to ask, man, like, what do you feel in your own life, the connection between health and wellness? And you could also lump self-development in there, and also psychedelics are. Like, how do you see those things linking together? Do you see them linking perfectly? Like, is it even weird to even ask it in your world? Like, I'm curious how you see it.
well, yeah. No, to touch on the last point you were making about people doing it at the entheogen Olympics.
Yeah.
I think that if you haven't been doing the small steps and then you manage to survive something like that, then you might create like a psychedelic ego that you're gonna get ahead of yourself later on. But yeah, no, I think, man, I mean, it's something that's got to be done with great care. I think at one time people really had great respect for these things, and at the same time, I guess it could go either way. I've just seen people have really bad experiences, and like, from my opinion, though, I think that, yeah, people should have, a great care. Maybe some people will go into it with no care and then they get the smackdown and they learn a lot from that, and maybe it'll be great for them, ultimately. But I mean, I've seen, one time I did acid with this woman, and I feel like I don't know where she's at now, yo, but I don't know if she ever came down. And at one point I was like, I want that shit that makes me never come down. Where's that shit at? Like, I was looking for that. You know what I mean? And I swear, like, I was kind of beside myself in my, use of it, and I was just, kind of being having a random around, and we were being frivolous with our bodies and everything. So I was like, hey, you just do some acid. I've been doing acid. I've been doing this kind of regularly, probably too regularly. You want to try some acid? And like, yeah, man. So she did acid. She had a bad trip. And then like, I'd seen her a few months later and I could tell like she never really recovered. And then next thing I know, she was in an insane asylum. So I was like, damn, man, I wish I never offered that to her though, ultimately. So I'm like, man, I can't, it's really something that's specific from person to person based on the work they've done within themselves. And so, I mean, it's like, I guess like anything, right? The dosage is everything. Because, right, the dosage is like what they say, like, it's not medicine, it's not poison or medicine, it's the dose that determines. Right? And so
Yeah.
that's what I've always heard. And so I mean, I don't know, I was just being reckless. And so I never had an experience like that. I definitely had experiences with abusing acid where I would, I just have too much confidence and I would get into other things. But I never had an experience where I thought that like I was never gonna come down, and I don't know, maybe she's okay now. I don't know, maybe she's a better person. I just don't know. I've lost contact, and so I think I don't know, I've seen people really shift great ways, and in myself, I've seen like a lot of help from psychedelics, but at the same time, I think yeah, people should use caution and really do the work and like really get into breath work and fasting and eliminating toxins from their body before they do it so that they can manage it better. But maybe that doesn't work for some people. Maybe some people need to just dive off into the deep end. I don't know, man.
Dude, it's funny you bring up LSD because I happen to be quite a fan, if you can be, of LSD.
Yeah.
And every experience to me is almost wildly different. And it's always a crapshoot, dude. Like, if I take 5 grams of mushrooms, as long as it's not like penis envy or like some strain that's just way higher in psilocybin, it's a pretty similar experience from strain to strain or from time to time, especially if we're talking the same strain. Again, you can't really describe it. You can never remember it fully. But when I'm there, I'm like, oh, yeah, this feels pretty similar to last time. But with LSD, on the other hand, it's really just like a coin flip, whether or not I'm going to be laughing, whether or not I'm going to be like, God, what was my name? And I've never been freaked out necessarily. Like there was an experience, I've told it probably 100 times in the show, so I won't tell the whole thing, but my cousin and I accidentally ate like 50 or 60 hits of L at one time through liquid because it was recrystallizing. Just shit happens, right? When you are a goofball and young. And, during that experience, there was a part of me that wanted to be afraid, but there was a much wiser part of me that was like, you lost that ability a long time ago. Like, you were on this ride, you're taking it, there's no going back. The only option is just to fucking go full send into it, or something challenging may happen. Like, you might never come back or whatever. And so during that experience, I remember thinking, like, I wonder, like, because I didn't know how much I really didn't know what happened. I just knew something got metrically fucked up, And when I was there was a thought of like, I have work in 2 days. Am I going to be like home in 2 days? Like, am I going to be back? Like, but it wasn't a fear. It was more of just like a genuine question of like, I'm pretty fucking far out right now. Like, I can't even form words right now. Like, I'm not even a human being. I'm just soaring in the stars. We stared at the stars all night for like 12 hours. But it took me like about 2 days to come down fully. But in the normal amount of time, like 10 hours, I was like a human again. You could tell I was getting tracers and things like that. But it was very interesting for sure. But yeah, like the number one thing for me is always like, if you realize you went too far, just surrender and get as safe as you possibly can. Obviously all the number one rules apply, which is like, don't do it in the wrong setting to begin with. Make sure you know what you're getting. Make sure you test it, yada, yada, yada. But every once in a while, something just happens. And so like the quickest thing I always say to do is like find the earth, lay on the earth somewhere safe and just stare up at the stars or the sky and just wait it out.
Yeah, man, and just breathe through it. I mean, I think that like ultimately you need like you're gonna reach a threshold like the law of diminishing reply type thing where because you only have so much dopamine and so much serotonin in the system. It's like you take a bunch, but then it's like your body's like, oh, look, we got no more to throw at this. So hey, this is as good as this is this is the peak. There's no more peak past this peak. Like, so because like you really have to have the ingredients inside of you, because I feel like, especially with DMT, I've seen people do DMT before 29, and their experiences are vastly different than people that do it after 29, especially if it's like their first time, I think. Because the brain's not really, the prefrontal lobe's not really completed. Like 25, you got a better chance 25 on, but like after 29, I feel like, because I talk to people that do it real young, and I'm like, man, I guess you didn't, you didn't really break through like that. And I've seen them take, pretty major hits, and I'm like, damn, I guess you just don't have the ingredients yet to really get that, that experience like you could, like, and I don't know if it ruins it for people. I don't know, but I think that you have to have that access in a sense, I guess you could say. Like, you have to have like fully inhabited that part of your body, like fully develop the prefrontal lobe, and you get in touch with it. You're doing breath work. You're actually dreaming, and then you do DMT or whatever, and then I think then it's like you're getting a real full experience to where you got all the ingredients to to respond, because ultimately, like, that's kind of like what the drug is just like causing the body to release stuff, and that's the experience. Like, that's like the beginning of the detox, is the hallucination. It's like, this is just the beginning of detoxing. You know what I mean? And so, if you have a lot of endorphins on hand, then it's going to be a big contrast. And then obviously, if you have a big rush of endorphins, and then you go through your process of recovering those endorphins. And if you continue to smoke or you continue to do something and the endorphins aren't replenished, then it's like a law of diminishing reply. Like, you're not really filling up the gas tank, so you never really get as far as you could. And that's why I think that, like, it's all got to be appropriated based on, like, the way you take care of your body, because I don't know. I one time I did DMT with my mom, and like I could never get her to do DMT sober. She never would do it sober, but she was drunk one night, and I was like, "Fuck it, let's just do some DMT with me." And then, like, and she had a good experience. I think it was good. Based on, she had done LSD like in the 70s and stuff, but based on what she described, I think it was okay experience. But if she was sober, if her endorphins was together, if she was fasting prior to, like people that when they go on ayahuasca retreats and stuff, you prepare for it, and then you do it where you're really ready, really prepared, and then you get like the full effect. And then I think that curbs the desire to want to perpetually do it. Then I think you'd be like, all right, I'm only doing it when it's time, instead of like all the time.
Yeah, dude, 100%. That could not be stated more often in the psychedelic space, that more ceremonies doesn't equal better results. Like, I'm sure it could, but like at the end of the day, like, it's not like A plus B equals C type thing.
Yeah.
Again, there have been times in my life when I was 23 and first started connecting with mushrooms that I would do them once a week for a month and a half. Yeah, I did that. Was it good or bad? I don't know. It worked out okay for me. Would I recommend it to others? No. But, and do I regret doing it? No, at the same time. But I think at a very other thing too, like, especially when it comes to medicines like MDMA or anything like, even LSD to a certain degree as well, but especially MDMA, how many people just don't know, like, hey, you're really not supposed to do that often, like, if you want to really keep the magic alive, no more than like once every 3 months. Now, again, have I broken that rule? Yes, I have. Would I do it again? No. Did I learn from it? Yes. Right. So I'm not speaking from a holier than thou place, but again, I'm very grateful that by the time I got into other psychedelics, I was 23. So I was already on my holistic health kick, and, was very aware that, like, my decisions and my actions really matter in the grand scheme of, my experience and quality of life. But at the same time, like, I used to witness a lot of what I would consider questionable life choices when I was at clubs when I was 19. I would luckily at that point just have a couple beers, maybe smoke some cannabis, and I would watch people just eat random crystals off people's hands. Again, not my life, not my monkey, not my circus, but, things that I knew I didn't want to choose for me. But very grateful that I got to see those things, because they allowed me to make choices that were more in alignment with me personally and my own discernment. Yeah, it's funny. I have a friend who I won't mention his name because I don't know if this is legal technically, but he was able to get his hands on 2 Sonoran desert toads, and has a whole area for them. And the first time he ever scraped them, I don't know the proper term, but essentially extracted medicine from them. And they live the fucking life, dude. Like, he takes such good care of them. He's very well off, so they live a fucking amazing life. They have an entire room. But basically, my girlfriend was down there at the time where he got the first extraction, and it was her friend, who they were completely sober. They might have connected with a little cannabis, but no drinking. And then he had quite a few drinks and was like, all right, I'll try it too, along with his buddy. And from what it sounded like, I wasn't there, and obviously I'm not them, so I can't tell you the experience exactly. But, she and her friend had a drastically different experience and a deeper and stronger experience than this gentleman and his friend. Again, like, as someone who, fortunately, alcohol has just never worked for, I'm always like so perplexed when people combine alcohol with psychedelics. I'm like, what? Like, why do you want to get a stomach ache? I mean, I get for some people, I guess it works or whatever, but it is amazing how, like, you can get more courage with alcohol, right? A lot of people can to do psychedelics, but such a slippery slope, especially with DMT. Like, we're not talking a gram of mushrooms. Like we're talking like the most powerful hallucinogen on planet Earth, dude.
Yeah, yeah, man. I mean, that that was my thing. I guess with acid, I think it just gave me too much confidence. Last time I did it on New Year's, and I did it with my brother. My brother, he's a drinker, and I was like, like when I went to the night, I was like, I'm only doing acid, and then as the
Yeah.
night went on, I was like, all right, fuck it, I have some White Claws, right? Then I got to get, then I like, then I'm like 16 White Claws in, and then like, then I'm drinking dark and light and everything, and I'm like, oh man, so yeah, and then I couldn't go to sleep, and I threw up the next morning. I was like, yeah, nah, that's enough. So I laid off.
Yeah.
I've laid off since. It's been like 2 years since I've done acid. It'll be 2 years this New Year's, but yeah, man, I feel like yeah, alcohol is crazy, man, and like I've done mushrooms and drank before once as well, and I threw up that time too. So I haven't really
Mhm.
seen good results from mixing the two, but yeah, man, and then when it comes to mushrooms too, I think that the worst experience for me with mushrooms is just I would cry. I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know what acid, because acid. I mean, I remember like one time, I had to lock a chick in a room. Like I had to sleep on the door in there with her. Like, no, you can't leave, yo. She was just in there on some like Rain Man shit. She was doing math and going pacing and stuff. And I was like, oh man, I hope she's not broken. And then, yeah, so I, I think that yeah, like it's different from yeah. You definitely I guess want to climb the ladder, but I don't know, man. How did you do it? Did you start with just shrooms? I started with salvia. That was the first, I guess, psychedelic I think I did.
That was the same for me, dude. So before I'd even ever really connected with cannabis, which my big thing is cannabis, I teach cannabis, et cetera. Me and cannabis are like this in life. And I've gone through a lot of different phases of my relationship with the plant. Now we have some good distance, but we still connect. But, when I was like 15, salvia got really big. And I had a friend who, like, at that age was always the one that was like, smoke weed, do this, do that. And I would kind of just watch from afar. No, I'm good, but I'll hang out with you while you do it. And for whatever reason, I don't know how the fuck they talked me into doing salvia of all things, but maybe it was because it was from a smoke shop. It wasn't illegal. I was like, oh, what's the worst that could happen? Right? Worst question to ask with psychedelics. So I think we did like 15 or 20x. It wasn't like, I've heard it goes up to like 100x, but yeah, it was the most weirdest experience of my life. I ripped a bong of salvia, and the next thing I knew, I was waking up. I was in a car when I did it, not driving. We were parked in a driveway at my parents' house, but it was my buddy's dad's Suburban. So it was like 7 seats. And so we were all like in there. And I don't know why I had my seatbelt on, but I did. When I woke up, I had apparently been trying to do a front flip in the seat, like while seatbelted in. So I woke up with like my head almost stuck underneath the front seat. And my friends are all laughing at me. For me, I was an orb just floating through space. And I saw this big blimp. And I'm not even a sports fan, but it was near the Super Bowl, and I'm in Boston, so Patriots, you know how that thing goes.
Yeah.
And so I remember in this dream I was having, it was just this pink sky with a blimp, and there was a big TV on there, and I was convinced this blimp had stolen my parents' TV, and I was going to get in trouble. So I was like trying to reach out with no hands. I was just an orb, and like grab this TV, and I kept being like, come on, give me that TV back. And then I woke up and was like, what the fuck was that? What was that I just did? So that was my experience, man. What was yours like?
Did you hit the salvia first out of everybody?
I don't remember if I was first. I wasn't last. I remember that because my buddy Eric went after me. I think I might have been second or third. Knowing me at that age and based on what it was, I was pretty fucking scared of like anything like that.
Yeah.
So chances are my buddy Corey, he was usually the one that would field test stuff. I bet he went first. Potentially Sean, the kid whose dad car we were in, he probably went second. I was probably like second or third or fourth, right around there. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Because every time I've done it, I always do it second, and then the person has a crazy trip in front of me, and then I end up just laughing so hard at them while I start to trip, and then I just remember I always just felt like I couldn't breathe because I was laughing, and at some point I get so like everything starts to spin and like fold up, so then I'm like, oh, like because like one time I did it in Amsterdam, and I was with a guy, and he hit the shit before me, and we're just sitting at his dinner table, and he had posters on the wall, and he just started, I guess, thinking they were looking at him or something, and he started flipping out, knocking the chairs and table over, and I had hit it, and I'm like, and I just started laughing. I was like, yo, I'm gonna die from laughter if I don't make it to this couch, and the couch just felt so far away. And I remember like when I got to the couch, like I didn't really know up and down kind of at that point, and I remember feeling like I don't know, I don't remember how to breathe. I'm gonna die, and then like. And then just kind of gradually coming to. and then just being mad hungry, having the crazy munchies off of the salvia. Salvia gave me crazy munchies.
You know what I remember the most is being super fucking itchy, dude. Like being like almost like I don't know if you've ever taken too much kratom before, where you just get kind of like agitated, and you don't get like angry, but you're kind of like dissociated, agitated, and itchy all at once, and you kind of just feel like you're in someone else's skin. It's a really weird feeling, but I remember that was the feeling I felt after, and I was not a fan. That was the only time I ever did salvia, dude. But funnily enough, dude, one of the kids in my cannabis mastermind recently found a guy who's like the salvia shaman, who apparently has this whole tech for it, this specific pipe you smoke out of. He sells it, and my buddy got it. And apparently when you dose it properly and you do like a micro dose of it, you can really go far in meditation, and it's amazing. So just recently he told me about that. He came down to visit when I hosted a retreat. And he was like, dude, it's actually amazing. Like, you know, apparently we probably just overdosed the shit out of it when we did it, you know, but apparently there's a real way to use it, you know? So that's pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean psychedelics. That is, I mean, well, especially mushrooms and acid, because DMT is like a drive-by. So I feel like it's all kind of like an autocorrect with the breath. Like I'll do the mushrooms, and then it's like I like to do them in the dark. Day tripping is okay, but I just like it in the dark. And so it just kind of forces me to. I already been doing breath work to prime my body to receive the experience, and then once it's starting to kick in, and all that blood is in my brain from the breath work anyway. It's so it's so much more vivid, and then like I just stay there, stay and put. I feel like my patience is just so much more. It's like immense when I do acid and shrooms, and that's like the first time I did acid, I was like so scared of never coming down, because like a lot of people telling me like oh, you never come down, you go crazy, and I didn't know, so I was like, damn, I'm just gonna make sure I do just lay here and do breath work the whole time, and I just remember feeling like that was 2 hours, that was 3 hours, and then just looking at the clock like, damn, that was so easy to just rip off a couple hours, 3 hours of breath work, and so I'm like, give me two more tabs. Give me two more tests. And I'm just doing, and I'm like beating, I thought I could like beat the system, It's like, and yeah, so I felt like for me, I think it's great for that, to show you that you can hold the breath in certain respects, like for like, greater form and for greater amounts of time, like, because minutes just go by. I hold the breath and I'll be forgetting, like, damn, I've been holding the breath this long. I got to exhale. And then, it just feels like I don't know, just so intense, the breath work on the psychedelics. And then when I did DMT the very first time, I did a bunch of breath work. I did like 40 days on just liquids before, so give or take a few days. And then I felt like it really helped me in my experience, because the guy I was doing it with, like, he ended up throwing up. I never threw up off it, but like, I don't think he was taking care of himself the same. And so we did it together, and I felt like the experience, like I retained like everything from that, or like as much as I guess you could in your first experience. I feel like I retained like most of the time. I feel like although time kind of felt suspended, I still kind of felt like I could see that it was suspended. Like, and other times when I would do it, I wasn't as prepared. So it was good experiences. Don't get me wrong, but it kind of came off a lot more cryptic than like a complete hallucination where I'm like immersed in the shit and like I'm in another kind of like in another place that's like inside of me. I don't know.
No, it makes perfect sense, dude. Like, for me, like I always tell anyone, like people will ask me like, should I do psychedelics? I'm like, first of all, don't put that responsibility on me. I'm not going to tell you an answer, but if you're going to, get familiar with breath work first, because like you really realize it in the psychedelic experience, especially when you do breath work, that at any point, if you get overwhelmed, just relax, just breathe very still, and you will start to slow your roll. And if you feel like you want some more fun, you can just pick up that fucking breath and just shoot off to the fucking planet nebula, and that's something I don't hear talked about enough. I've talked about it on the show before, but I remember the first time I ripped a fucking strong series of breath work while tripping balls on acid. Dude, it was so funny, man. We were at a retreat. Someone there brought liquid. And so, like 25 of us all dosed, and we had just gone through a men's retreat. So we had done combo, cacao, mushrooms, and this was Sunday. So basically we were pretty cleaned out. A couple of us had fasted for a couple of days before we got there and a couple of days while we were there, especially before combo and whatnot. And so we were pretty wide open. It was a bunch of men that had just gotten together and, cleansed ourselves and done a bunch of coaching work. And then a bunch of other, men and women showed up. So we do this ceremony, and during it, my friend asked me, "Hey, can you lead a cannabis ceremony?" And I'm like, "All right." And so at the end of the yoga, my buddy Matt was like, "Hey, I want to do another dose." I'm like, "Okay, I will too." And so he got the liquid from the girl that brought it, and he went to go put one dose in my tongue, and he put two. And I was like, "Fuck!" And he was like, "I'm going with you." So he puts two, right? And so then that was our second and third dose, basically each. And so we start doing this cannabis ceremony, dude. And like 30 minutes into it, the walls are just fully melting. I'm like, well, God's got this one, dude. And so at the end, it went really well. Everyone had a great experience. People were hugging, crying, etc. So I just decided, hey guys, let's send this off and close the circle with a nice, just quick round of breath work. 10 breaths, hold, lock, squeeze, and just, send it off that way. So I had been doing this type of breath work for, a couple of years now, and had never experienced something that I could call like otherworldly. Maybe I wasn't breathing right. Who knows what was happening? But we sit around, we all hold hands. We do this harmonizing Om exercise that Paul Chek taught me. And then we rip around, and all of us, all 25 of us, leave our bodies, get slung shot like up, and then we come back into our bodies and all start laughing at the same time. So we're all like, what? Everyone was like, dude, what was that? And I'm like, guys, I did not plan that. I had no idea that was going to happen. So we did like 25 more rounds, and dude, people were dropping like flies. Like they'd come back and people would be like, I'm out. And I asked a couple of them after, I'm like, was it how far out you went? Did it get scary? And they're like, no, it was how hard it was to get back in, and there was one time where I came back and it felt like my soul landed like over here. Like it was like everything was kind of like wrong. Like it was just like this reality that I entered for a split second where everything was up was down, right was left, everything was backwards. And then I was like, I didn't even know how to think in that space. And then boom, I'm back. And I'm like, whoa, what the fuck was that? That's when I realized, I'm like, LSD specifically with breath work, dude, is a crazy ride.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. So you ever do LSD and DMT at the same time?
I've actually, yes, there was a time, and for everyone listening, I'm not recommending this, but I fucked around and found out. There was a time where I did a 5-MeO DMT ceremony and then took acid after. So it wasn't like at the same time, but it was in the same day. Yeah.
That's what I mean. Acid got me in trouble a few times because I'll be like, oh yeah, let's just do this, man. And not really be, not being so prepared for the DMT experience. Maybe I did some breath work that morning, then I did the acid. And then by like nightfall, I'm like still tripping because I'm taking more tabs or whatever. The liquid is the best though, like you were saying.
Oh yeah.
Liquid. But then like at that point by the evening, I'm like, let's just go to the next, let's hit the DMT while we're still kind of tripping on this acid, like however many tabs in. And I feel like the DMT experience was really, it was almost like getting, like leg, what is it, the leg sweep when, and you like in mixed martial arts, like that just knocked off my feet. And the experience was vivid, but it was just so cryptic. I felt like it was just not very direct. Like I was seeing like random shapes, and it was like random. It was just a lot more random than it usually is. Like it usually the whole process of like entering the trip unfolds, I'm in a situation, and then I come back. But that was, yeah. So what are your contingency processes for when shit gets like that? Like, 'cause I've only had I had one mushroom trip where kind of don't remember a lot of this shit. Like honestly, it was like, yeah, like I blacked out, I guess. All I remember was like kind of coming to, and my dog was next to me. I guess he thought I was dead. He was just like, and I'm like, what the fuck? I forgot that I even took shrooms kind of for like a split second. I forgot. And then I was like, oh, and then like everything kind of rushed back. Like all my memories of my life kind of rushed back. And then I just started crying. It was like I got thrown back into my body too fast or something. And like, I don't know. I've built like different contingency processes and ways to prepare, but like, what is your fail safe, I guess? Like, I guess you get too far in, there's nothing you can do mechanically, but I mean, like, what can you do if you still can see shore?
Yeah. I mean, dude, for me, like tobacco is a big one. Like if I ever go too far out, hape, which is the last thing you want to do when you're in that state, but that works extremely well. Like I remember there was a time where I had been introduced to hape. I was just tiptoeing back into tobacco because I was a former cigarette smoker and stuff, and just like swore it off. And I just started finding out about it, and I had done it a couple times, and I was like, okay, like, people were like, it's going to ground you. I'm like, is that what that does? I don't know. I don't really feel it. But then, and there was a time where we had done 5-MeO like a week before this, And I didn't understand the whole idea of reactivation, right? That like with 5 specifically, I don't know if it's with NN as well, DMT, but with 5-MeO, if you do any other psychedelic, within like a couple of weeks, it could potentially like be way stronger because of that potentiating factor of 5-MeO. So we did a 10-gram mushroom tea like the next weekend between me and Rachel, and it just fucking slammed us, dude. Like, bro, I was talking to the wall. I knew I was talking to the wall, but the wall was alive. And I saw my cat in a previous lifetime was my lover. Like, dude, like it was like crazy. And I the whole time I was aware enough to be like, this is hilarious, but really far out. And Rachel was like stuck in what we call the waiting room, just the same recurring thought over and over. And that's all she was at that point, was just a recurring affirmation. It was let go and trust. You can have whatever you want. She needed to be stuck there for 4 hours to get it into her subconscious. So it wasn't like anything, damaging, but basically, during that experience, I started to be like, this is like nutty, dude. Like, I can't even make sense of shit. Like, I can't even like, I was starting to like tiptoe out of like, what's my name? Like, I don't even like, I can't even have context for the fact I'm a human being anymore. Yeah. So I remembered Hape, and I just went and blasted myself with 2 shots of Hape, one in each nostril. And dude, I felt it like immediately. It was just like my consciousness, if you want to call it that, or the mind, the eternal mind, whatever you want to call it, came back down to ground level, but everything was open. And I could see like where I was before, way up there. I could go over there and look at like different planets. I could connect with other beings, but I didn't have to. I was like just nicely rooted on the ground, and that worked really well. Before I found that out, it was really just like spray and pray, dude, just like get as close to the ground as you can so you don't have to worry about falling over. Like that acid trip I was telling you about, that was kind of how it was. Like I started to, first, I couldn't really tell, light really got hard because like, if it was dark out when we did this, it was like 10 PM, the silliest time to take that much acid. But basically like if there was a flame, right, from like a tiki torch, it would light up everything and I couldn't see what the darkness was. Like I couldn't see like if there was a hole there or anything I was going to fall in. Then when I got to an area where it was all dark, my depth perception started going, and then I couldn't tell if I was balancing or not. So for all I knew, I was like a millisecond away from just smashing my face on the ground. So during like stuff like that, where like, your senses got all weird, you're getting synesthesia. Like I was like smelling colors and like tasting sounds, like really weird shit was happening. All like the voice that kept coming to me was just put your feet in the grass, put your feet in the grass. And this is before I understood about earthing or like anything like that. So for a little while when I was getting it, I was kind of trying to avoid it. I was like, why is that coming in? Like, what's that going to do? And it just kept getting louder and louder. And when my cousin also started feeling the immense fucking experience that I was experiencing as it hit me before him, like he started to get a little like, all right, dude, like, what did we do? Like, holy shit, what did we take? Like, how are we going through this? And I was like, we just have to go put our feet in the grass. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I don't know. We just have to get in the grass. And so we laid a hammock out, one of those E&O hammocks, like the fabric ones, on the ground, and then just laid on the ground. And as soon as I was on the ground, shit just opened up and I had the best experience. But usually that is like my number one thing. Get as close to the ground as you can. And then just repeat like, I am love, and or I took a medicine and the medicine is working. Remind yourself like, I'm a bad motherfucker. I took this because I wanted this experience and I'm having the experience, and it's meant to be uncomfortable sometimes, and I'm okay. This is all within the context of what I knew was going to happen. And just try to like convince yourself that that's part of the game. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, I got there's these I guess you call them affirmations from this book series called The Meta Netter, and it's like in alignment with the Tree of Life or whatever and sacred geometry. And I feel like it was really helpful at different times when I would get anxiety on acid and things like that, as far as just like coming back and just reminding myself of things. But I think once you get real deep in, you just gotta ride it out. It's kind of nothing you can do. It's kind of nothing there's nothing you can say. It's like, look, man, the time for negotiation is over, and we have to go through this now.
Yeah. Dude, 100%, man. Like I always say, like the worst thing you can do is fight it. Like fighting is actually what makes it hard. It's kind of like a roller coaster, right? Like, if you're strapped in and you're going up the hill, right? It might be terrifying to think like, cause I hate roller coasters. That's why I'm using this example, right? But like if I was going up Superman, for instance, at Six Flags, I would be fucking terrified. But at the end of the day, I'm strapped into a thing. It's worked for millions of other people. Probably not going to fall out that time. There's no imminent danger in reality. But if I decide to try to get out of that fucking seat while it's going up and like, I'm going to get in a lot more trouble, you know, because now I'm not actually strapped in. There's real actual danger. And so that's usually what I say about psychedelics. Now, again, like if you're predisposed to psychosis, et cetera, things can happen. But for the most part, if you can just take yourself out of the equation, just go on the ride and just, you know, go through, like let it happen for you, cry, laugh, scream, whatever you got to do, but just go through it. You'll come out fine the other end. It's usually when people try to fight and resist. That's when I think a lot of the trauma can happen and a lot of like the things like maybe what happened with that girl, you know, that you saw that didn't like, you know, come back. Yeah.
Yeah, like I guess to bring that back, man. Like she took the acid with me that one time. It's like December, so then I see her in like March, and then I seen she was a little off, and then I was like, you know, I had a dab pen at the time, and she hit the dab pen, and I should have just never let her hit the dab pen, man. And I feel like from that point on, she lost it, man. Like it was like she never integrated the first experience, I guess. So it was like still kind of going, I guess. Or since she never kind of recalibrated. And then so next thing I know, man, she's running through I live in the woods, you know, so she's like running through the woods. I don't even know if she had clothes on. All I know is she was gone. The next day I get up because I was sleeping separately, and I get up and I go look. I'm like, oh damn, she's not here. And then she had left me some messages on my phone. And then my neighbor was like, yo, man, the cops was in the street. And I was like, so she must have ran through the woods and ran across a creek in like March. It's cold, I guess. I don't know what happened exactly, man, because it's just crazy, man. It's off of just a dab hit, though. It's off a dab hit months later after the acid. And maybe she was predisposed to psychosis, like you were saying. But yeah, I didn't think it would be that. I guess I was so casual with it. I assumed that everybody else would be like that. And I think I was way too cavalier with sharing that. And, yeah. So how do you think people can integrate this stuff like nationwide? I feel like you see, I don't know, I'm in Alabama at the moment, and they got CBD shops and stuff. It's only a matter of time before they have mushrooms and stuff on the shelves or whatever. Or it'll just be an all-out fucking collapse of society, and then people will just have it at their cabins, and you just trade for it. So I don't know, man. Like, how do you think that looks like? Because ultimately, like individuals integrate, or I guess they don't. I don't know, but and then like it kind of affects the whole society because everybody's gonna operate differently. Like even if you didn't do it yourself, like it's more people now that's like, yeah, my brother did DMT, or my brother does acid, or does this. So it's just more commonplace now. So I wonder how it's going to look in the future, like a psychedelic society, like psychedelics have fully integrated. How that even looks.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like the top word that pops through is education is so mandatory, and not only for psychedelics, but also for like the human experience, like how to handle emotions, how to utilize breath work, what the nature of reality truly is, right? You know, again, no one knows the objective answer, but let's at least have the conversation in schools. Let's get kids started early on this idea that we're living out this illusion that we're a separate being having a human experience, but that is not actually what any sacred text, if you look far enough back, says, right? So we might not know the answer, but we know the answer is not, oh, we're just a meat suit and we live for 100 years and we're meant to buy houses and drive cars we can't afford and work this shitty job and then die. Like that's what's going on right now. And I feel like that is part of the reason why people get so fucked up when they do psychedelics, because they're coming from like, picture most people, right? Like now for anyone listening to the show right now, you don't fit in that category because you're already listening to the show, right? But like, let's think about a real average human being. They're probably eating fast food. They're probably drinking tap water. They're probably showering in tap water. They're probably working at a job they don't like. They're probably people pleasing. They're probably doing a whole lot of stuff. And they probably haven't thought that much into who am I? What am I? Where do I come from? Where am I going? And why the hell am I here? What is my purpose? So like the most foundational elements of this, experience as a spiritual divine being living out this illusion are not covered whatsoever. Now you picture one of those people picking up mushrooms and hopefully not, but potentially eating like 5 grams right off the rip. That can be a very big challenge in their life. And so I think that along with psychedelics, and I think, the rise in popularity in psychedelics are a sign that people are starting to be more open to whatever you want to call it, spirituality, the nature of reality, whatever it is, like people are starting to ask questions that don't necessarily have an answer, just to be able to discuss things and whatnot. And so I think that what we're going to need long term is a rapid amount of education. And also, physiological testing too, I think would be really pertinent. Now, again, I didn't do that. I'm sure you didn't do that. I'm sure no one listening here did that. I'm not opposed to people just eating psychedelics and doing, using their own free will to make their own decisions. But if we want to be responsible, like, my buddy Len May, for instance, right, has this beautiful test you can do on your DNA that isn't sold to BlackRock or whatever, that you can actually show if you have a predisposition to schizophrenia, and things like that. So like, things like that can allow people to see like, ooh, I might have that gene. Like maybe in this lifetime, psychedelics aren't meant for me. Or maybe I could connect with something, very low dose in a facilitated type situation with the awareness that I also have that predisposition. I'm not exactly sure, but, I know that part of the reason I started this show is just start having these conversations and start allowing people to see like what the full scope of experience could possibly be like when you take these medicines, because at the end of the day, and like I know as well, like I've fucked around a lot of times with things and sometimes you get really fucking shook, like there are some fucking things, especially with acid, because it's just so fucking strong. Like mushrooms, it's really hard to get yourself in a pickle. Like you're not going to accidentally eat 80 grams of mushrooms, like you're going to fucking know. But like with acid, you could take a hit of liquid and not know if that was like a quad hit. You have no fucking idea, and that's part of what I love about it. But also like you have to be a certain type of human to be okay with losing your lease on reality like that, so that's my best guess at an answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I always thought it was funny that I fancied hallucinating. I was like, man, is this a problem? Like, but
Yeah.
I think though that man, yeah, like you were saying, education, man. I mean, a big part of it would be the way people treat their approach to sexuality. I think has a lot to do with their approach to psychedelics, man. Too. I think if you drain yourself sexually, then I think that even if you're not going to even have the experience, even if you do have a good experience, it wouldn't be what it could be. And I think that you're more ripe for having an off-putting experience that maybe makes you go deeper into the shell or something. I think that taking care of the root is a big deal, when it comes to psychedelics. I think just because, especially for men, like you're losing a lot of oil, you're losing a lot spinal fluid. You lose a lot of fluid. You're losing a lot of energy in general, and whatever form or whatever has been synthesized into. You're losing a lot, and I think that a lot of people don't really respect that. And if more people did, then I think that we could experiment with psychedelics, and it would be, a different world. Because right now I just think that we kind of, if you treat each other like a certain way, like we're kind of like disposable, like what kind of the culture has kind of been geared to for a while now, I think that you're going to create a lot of traumas before you even know it, and like sexually, by abusing yourself and others, like emotionally. That when you come time to do the psychedelics, there's going to be a lot of knots to untie, and I think it'll be tough, man, for a lot of people. But rather go through it than not, though.
Yeah, 100%, dude. Yeah, like the sexual energy thing is a huge subject, and again, like I make no judgment, right? Just clear discernment based on what I've experienced in my life and now what I choose moving forward. But having sex with, like, even releasing seed, right? Like, having a male release seed with someone he loves versus someone that he wants to use as an object, very different things, Yeah. Then on top of that, like your ability, just like breath work, right? Your ability to retain your seed and be able to work through that energy even while you're having sex and things like that. That's also a great skill to be able to rep for psychedelic experiences, because you're working with life force energy in a psychedelic experience. Now, it may be different. You're maybe not having sex when you're doing psychedelics. Maybe you are. I mean, it's pretty fun, right? If you haven't tried it. But at the end of the day, like, there are ways to be able to do certain root locks while you're breathing and doing certain things like that, and start moving that cerebral spinal fluid, start moving that life force energy around to different chakra sites that need it. There's so many cool things you can do with the body once you start understanding this. But that's why I say, like, dude, I don't even know where to start with this education. It's like, like we have to like figure out, like, okay, well, first of all, we're not the only beings here, right? We have to stay with that. Then also we have to figure out what we truly are, right? The nature of reality. Then we have to figure out, like, we have to convince a lot of people that chakras are not just woo woo, they're actually real. That, life force energy is not woo woo, it's real, which is pretty funny because we have a very big population of people that think all that is woo woo. And I think it's just so funny the tricks the ego plays. It's like, all right, guys. So you're telling me that there's 10,000 years of recorded history from all across the world, and pretty much every spiritual practice talks about very specific things that are called different things, but they're all alive. But you figured it out in your 20, 30 years of being on Earth. It's all bullshit, It's just so funny, man. So I think that, like, it's a big question, like it's a big endeavor to start educating people on all the things that it takes to even operate a human vessel to the best degree we can, let alone to start shifting and altering our consciousness on top of that human vessel, And I think that if we don't have any awareness, if we haven't thought into like who we truly are and why we're here, I mean, at best, you're going to have just a really fucking wildly confusing experience. At worst, it could potentially break you, like, if you think you're an atheist, for instance, and you do acid and you unionize with Creator, that's going to be very interesting to come back to.
Yeah. Nah, I mean, I guess we're all doing it to have some insight or perspective on the objective reality. Ultimately, like just to break through who we think we are and what we think things are. And so, yeah, like, so much of it is just like is that ultimately like just getting a sneak peek at I guess the clarity of having insight on the objective reality, and so like when is the body welcoming things and when is it getting rid of things. And yeah, I think that it's tough, man, because especially with sex, it's like objectively, if the woman's not ovulating, her body's not really fully welcoming sex. And I just think that, if you have a whole society of people that just release seed and then just women basically kind of raping themselves or allowing themselves to be raped, you're gonna create a society ripe for bad trips or people that are just afraid because they know deep down it's gonna be a bad trip because their bodies has been used like a brothel, for however long. And I think, too. I mean, the language, man, the language. We got to be a lot more direct and clear with our language to cut a lot of the fluff that kind of builds up from using indirect language. I think we can abuse ourselves because we don't really use direct language, and and the more that you study older languages and even just the origins of English in general or whatever words that you use, whatever prayers you use, you're getting further and further back into the origins of those words and what they mean, and then it's easier, I feel like, to differentiate up from down or this from that in the world. And then you go into a psychedelic trip, and then I think it just since you've already been doing that work, it's just going to give you more clarity because you've already made yourself, you become literate, like actually literate in different ways, like because it's like things that get communicated that seem cryptic, but it's like we just don't have the languages to read it directly. And I think that since we, it's a big breakdown of communication and just language in general, that we don't talk to ourselves correctly. And I think that's how we can get lost in identifying with the thoughts and then having bad trips and stuff like that. So yeah, I think so much of it is education, like you're saying.
Oh yeah, man, dude, I couldn't have said it better myself. Dude, this has been amazing, bro. We could keep riffing for 3 more hours, bro. I gotta have you back on, dude.
Yeah.
I can't wait to come out and see you in person next time I'm in California. You're in Cali now, right?
Yeah, I'm in California. I'm in Kings Canyon. We're like a little bit close to Kings Canyon. It's in the Sierra Nevadas. And where you said you're in Boston, right?
Yeah, I'm in Boston. Yep.
I guess I gotta check out your schedule, or if you're in Cali, man, maybe we can work something out, man, and that'll be dope, bro. Yeah,
I would love it, bro.
If you get a chance, or people listening, man, I don't know. You guys probably know, like hashtag Meltology, man. I don't know. I always tell people that Meltology, man. I'm always promoting Meltology. Like, just look into that. It's crazy, man. I don't know. They might have already seen it, but maybe somebody hasn't. I don't know.
Dude, it's always worth repeating, bro. And speaking of which, right? Speaking of which, like people finding you and whatnot, where can I send people to find you? I'll put it in the show notes and everything, but would you rather me send them to YouTube, Instagram? What's the best place for people to get in touch with you, man?
Instagram, at _ Taylor Durden, like Tyler Durden from Fight Club, but Taylor Durden. Yeah.
Dude, hell yeah, bro. And dude, I got one last question that I ask everyone. You down for it?
Sure, man.
All right, cool. Let's say someone listens to this episode and they're really excited to try out psychedelics in their own life. what is the one piece of advice that you would offer them to allow them to use the proper discernment in choosing whether or not psychedelics are right for them at this moment in their lives?
I guess I would just ask them what they really care about, man. Like what their priorities are, and then that would probably, I guess, because it's like, what are you doing them for? Like, what do you think you're getting out of this, or like, where are you at in your life? Ultimately, are you doing this because you're lonely, or just because you want to experiment, or how are you just trying to thrill seek, or do you just want more information? Or what do you really want? Like, because I think you can do the right things for the wrong reasons. So I think ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'd ask them like, what do you really want, out of this experience? Like, what do you really want from it? What do you expect from it? And then that response probably will let me know. Because yeah, if they're just like, yo, I just want insight so I can cheat the system somehow or bypass my emotions or something. I don't know. Then maybe it's not the right. I mean, obviously, people that are avoidant like that would say it in a different way, but I think yeah, I guess I'd ask them why they want to do it, and because questions are it, man. You can't tell people nothing. You just gotta ask the questions, and then they'll have
Mm-hmm.
to, then they gotta respond, and they're like, "Damn, I'm lying to myself," or whatever. you know?
Well, dude, we all have the answers already within us, right? And questions pull, answers push, and that's why I'm such a fan of asking good questions. And I love that question because essentially what you're asking is like, what is your intention here? Like, well, give me the context. Like, why are you even interested in this? We go to talk about that first before we figure out if it's a good or bad decision for you subjectively at this time. But I 100% agree with that, man. Like for everyone listening, you guys know I preach that very often. I mean, I'm on my soapbox all the time about it, right? Like, it's not because there are rules to follow. It's not about that. It's just like, hey, if you don't know what you're looking for, how do you know if you got it or not? It's just like straight up like you can do psychedelics without intention. Go for it. Have fun. But, going through that myself and now helping so many people through it, you just don't really know what you're looking for. So there's no way to know if you got it, versus if you at least have an idea, like I'm just curious about, life, right? Even that, it's vague, but it gives you at least a little bit of a direction from which to go in, right? When you come out, someone could say, did you figure out something about life? And you can go, yeah, actually I did. Or no, maybe I didn't, but I saw these things and I'm not really sure what to make of it. So you have some way to contextualize it. But without that, you're really just like fucking around. And with psychedelics, like we talked about, like there's less risky things to mess around with, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. What are what steps have you taken to even come to this point? Like maybe you should take a little lesser risk. Because some people have done breath work and fall. Like people message me like, "I fell, man. I fucking split my head open doing breath work." I'm like, "Damn, you're definitely not ready for psychedelics."
Yeah.
like, so,
Like who taught you to stand up and do breath work? Like
yeah,
sit down, bro.
you're in a safe, soft place, man.
Yeah. That's too funny, man. Oh, well, Taylor, this has been amazing, man. Guys, I'm sure you've loved this episode. Taylor and I just really dove into this, like I do every episode, and the Divine will got a great conversation out of this, and I'm super excited to dive into the next time. Make sure you check him on Instagram. Make sure you check him on YouTube. Give him a follow. This guy's awesome, doing amazing stuff in so many different realms that really pair up amazing. Like I was talking about breath work, fasting, psychedelics, and comedy. Man after my own heart right there. So guys, if you love the show, go give us a 5-star review on Spotify and or Apple. We are so appreciative of it. It keeps us allowing the show to get out to more and more people. And until next time, everybody, no matter where you are in the world, I hope you're having the best day ever. And as always, may the source be with you. Peace for now, everybody.